Hello, and welcome to AI Insights, the Executive Brief. I'm Ben's AI avatar, here to introduce another stellar episode where we explore the intersection of AI, technology, and business strategy. Today, we have the pleasure of hearing from Christian Hammer, the CEO and founder of Vala AI, and the host of his own podcast, It's Techtastic.
Even though in some form or another AI, as at least the way I think about it, is decades old, we're still at the very beginning of it really impacting the rest of society and not just being a bunch of researchers working on it. When somebody claims to be an expert, you should treat them just like you would a response from the AI, but verify because you never know. And the other part of that means is that you have that chance to be an expert too. Start using the tools and see what they can do for you.
Christian is not just a leader in the AI space, but also someone deeply committed to understanding how technology impacts society. In this episode, Christian shares his journey from launching Vala AI in 2022 to discussing how AI is revolutionizing data management in logistics and beyond. Get ready for a fantastic discussion that dives deep into the current and future potential of AI. Let's jump right into it.
I'm Christian Hammer. I'm the CEO and founder of Vala AI. I also have a podcast, and It's Techtastic. I love being on your show.
Yeah, Christian, thank you. So that's how we met, right? Is kind of a podcast swap here. It's fun to be on the opposite side for me, to where I get to have the conversation, get to dig in. Especially, I find it interesting after I have initial conversations with, an amazing host like yourself. I have so many questions during it where I'm like, oh, I've got to ask this. I need to know this. And so I'm glad to have you. Thanks for jumping on. And so we were just talking. You said that your company you started back in, it's not forever ago, but 2022. But in AI terms, it is forever ago. It was founded as an AI company. So walk me through the initial inception of an idea of something so early into AI.
Technically, I've been in AI a lot longer. The current form of generative AI is very, very new to most of us, but there's been something around for a long time. So let me explain how we got there.
Mm-hmm.
In 2019, I was at Wayfair during the pandemic, and our sales doubled overnight, right? Because everybody's stuck at home. They want to make their house nicer. They're buying furniture. They're buying pillows and whatever else, right? But like anybody else, we had only 7 to 14 days of inventory because just in time. That's what everybody does. So I find myself at the head of logistics and global supply chain for Wayfair. And all of a sudden, we're down to not 14 days of inventory, we're down to 7 because sales doubled, right? Mm-hmm. Nothing's inbound. Ships aren't going. Factories aren't running. Trucks aren't moving unless we dispatch people to go get them. But we had the foresight to build a tool called Lighthouse. And Lighthouse was just a data dictionary. It had some predictive systems built into it because it had to, but it was really just a tool. Well, sorry, I just conflated two different tools, Lighthouse and Lightship. Lighthouse is just a data dictionary. That's all it's really doing.
Okay.
And what a data dictionary is just I have a piece of data that I don't understand exactly what it is, and it gives me the definition of it, tells me how it came about, and tells me how I might use it. But this one was a little bit more clever. It made associations too, because it was trying to tell you, don't create another system of record for that. We already have one. Because this is the problem we'd run into at Wayfair, is we had a proliferation of technologies. People are just building tons of them, and they didn't really know what existed. So this tool that was trying to stop that spontaneous generation of new systems of record for domains that were already defined, right? Mm-hmm. That happens in any large tech organization, by the way. Mm-hmm. That's what it was solved to do. Cool. That's not why it ended up being valuable, though.
Right.
It allowed the business analysts, it allowed the operations teams to ask some tough questions like, hey, I see that there's none of this item in stock. This SKU is just missing because it's not in the warehouse.
Yeah.
Right. But we have ownership of it. We know we ordered a bunch of it. Where the hell is it?
Mm-hmm.
And so they were able to use the tool to go, oh, it's not in the WMS. It's on the warehouse management system. It's in the transportation management system because it's on a truck. Yeah. Let's send a driver out to go get the truck. And that is literally the reason that Wayfair was able to double their sales. It was actually about $1 billion to $1.5 billion in lost sales that weren't lost because of that one tool. So that's COVID, right?
Yep.
I leave Wayfair in the middle of COVID because, frankly, I'm helping the world find and deliver sofas while people are dying, while medicine's not shipping, or food's getting stuck in ports. It's like, this isn't the best use of my time. And TradeLens, which was a joint venture between IBM, AP Moller Maersk, the big ocean shipping line, and then had a consortium of all the other ocean lines, and World Bank and the United Nations had an initiative involved with us. They came looking for somebody to help them, fix what they built.
Yeah.
It's like, that's a better use of my time. So went and did that. And it was, as we were rolling that in, it was acquired by Maersk and pulled in entirely, which was when I started Vala. And I went back and said, what was the thing that we built at Wayfair that was so profoundly important that solved all these problems? What did we build? That's right. And why is that such an important thing? Because I ran into the same damn problem with TradeLens, with all those different ocean carriers and with all the trucking lines and with everybody. They have their systems. They've got their transportation management system. Well, that transportation management system doesn't talk to that transportation management system. So somebody has to build custom code to do that.
Yeah.
Yuck. Like, and it just, there's a great company, Chain.io, Brian Glick, awesome founder. Like, they're trying to solve that integration problem. But that's not really the problem. The problem is people don't have access to the data they need to do their jobs. So that insight is what led us to build Vala. Now, we talked about it wrong for the longest time. We talked about it as tech debt, because to me, it was the gap.
Yeah.
Right. But eventually we're like, wait, it's the data problem, and we can solve that with AI.
Right. And you're hitting on something I think that's really key with AI, and that's how it starts at the data, right? Data being the lifeblood of AI, and also how that's a real applicable use case for AI right now, where there is a lot of ideas with AI and there's a lot of direction where we're going to go with artificial intelligence. But starting with the data is the most important part. And did you find that aside from having to collaborate all the data together, did you find that data was also messy at the same time? So there's a lot of integrity and cleanup you needed to do?
Oh, especially on things like supply chain.
Yeah.
Where you've got, one of the reasons there's so many gaps is there are quite literal gaps. There's no system there. It gets printed out on pieces of paper. A human being takes those pieces of paper, does their job, and then might sit back out of the computer and put it back in, maybe.
Yeah.
Right. But there's entire steps where there's manual reentry. And so the data just from that, forget everything else that can go wrong, right, is messy.
Yeah.
And right. I mean, just thinking of like product IDs, like SKU and all the various forms of that, you can have a dozen different identifiers, unique identifiers for the same item.
No, you bring up there's so much to dig into here. This is fascinating. So another thing you're bringing up, and I think it's important to understand, and at the beginning, we were talking about AI, early for an AI company, but yet not, because AI and the framework of AI has been around for quite some time. As you said, you've been working in AI for a while and working on AI type of systems for a while. But it seems like now, again, when I think we talked about this when I was on with you, about everyone's an AI company now, even when they're not an AI company, but you're actually, in essence, pioneering and understanding very early on where AI starts out with the data. What will you say, though, from a technology advancement since 2022? What have you seen advance most in AI? Accuracy, maybe, in the data? Like, what are you seeing? What are you seeing advance most?
I think it's there was something that I personally grabbed onto the moment ChatGPT 3 came out. And it was that promise of being able to use the talk to and interact with the technology in the way that I talk to and interact with a person. And I don't really, the voice part of it, yeah, but also just I can type and text with you. I can send you an email, right? And you get what I'm talking about. It was that. And that, for me, that's why it became like this instant with this version of the technology was one of those moments. It's like, that's it. We've hit that critical moment. We got it. And that has continued to aggressively expand. So I use Claude quite a bit, which is
Right.
Anthropic's, right? And
Yep.
they've got the newest versions, I think 3.5 or something like that. But if you ask it to do like, hey, let's write a business plan, and then I need a demo of the product that we just described, it does that. It will build you a demo of your product. Like right? The ability to be able to take my desires and intentions and translate that into something that the machine's actually doing, that piece alone just keeps advancing so much faster than they've expected.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That's huge. Do you find the human interaction with AI, and you talk about that, and Claude is interesting because like if I correct Claude, it'll be like, I'm sorry, like I shouldn't have done that. And I kind of like that. I like the interaction where GPT goes in and out. So OpenAI goes, sometimes it will interact, sometimes it'll just jump ahead. And I think one problem that I have is GPT jumps too far ahead. Like it just starts trying to predict what I want instead of waiting for me to ask what I want. But do you find that helps your creativity, having a human like interaction while you're going back and forth between AI and yourself? Or do you think that's just a little value added feature that
No, I
is
think it unlocks a lot of creativity, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know if you use some of the other tools too. Like I'm now using Luma Dream Machine. I'm using is it Suno or Sona, the music creation one?
Okay.
And
Yeah, I haven't messed with that one.
yeah, I'm playing around with them mostly because I want to see what's possible. And there's another one, I should just pull them up on my screen, but there's another one that takes and will, like, if you put a character into it, like a photograph of yourself, for example, or you create a character on Midjourney, you can put it in, and then you can add audio to it, and it'll lip sync to it, and it looks real. Luma Dream Machine,
Yeah.
I've been screwing around with taking 2 images from Midjourney and putting in and seeing what it'll create the video of the transition from one of those video images to the second one. I've just been doing that to see what happens, right? So from a creativity standpoint, the ability to interact with it a lot more human way, a much more natural way,
Mm-hmm.
doesn't force you to like code switch. You don't have to put your brain in the, oh wait, how do I tell the computer to do this?
Sure.
Right. So yeah, absolutely unlocks a lot.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. So I want to jump back now because idea or a thought or question, let's call it a question, wasn't even a thought of data, and especially in supply chain. And I talk about it, but I want to get your take on it. So I talk about how in supply chain, there's a lot of external factors that impact supply chain, right? It could be weather, it could be events, it could be whatever. Are you finding that you're able to start putting some of those external factors and considering with AI external factors to make more or better predictive analytics? Have you been able to get into much of that yet?
Yeah, not with Vala. We're not doing that yet.
Okay.
But definitely with Wayfair, we did that quite heavily.
Yeah.
So there was a couple predictive systems. Lightship was the one that tried to figure out when your package was actually going to arrive.
Mm-hmm.
And it did way, way, way more than just say, hey, it'll be there on Wednesday. In the background, it was planning the entire route. Every truck that was going to touch it, every
Wow.
vendor that would have to interact with it, the whole thing. And the reason it had to do all that was because of all those external factors.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's in the Port of Long Beach right now. We know we've got to get it to our first mile facility in, whatever, somewhere probably in Long Beach, California. And then it's going to have to get to our middle mile facility, and then it's going to be put out to our last mile facility, that route. And then we're going to give it to FedEx, and it's going to go off. So that takes this amount of time because we know the road conditions, we know the weather, we know like the average time, all of that. And those predictive systems, though, those are a different type of AI than we typically are talking about today when we're talking about Gen AI and a lot of the tools that we use, right? Because what those tools are really doing is looking at history and saying,
Mm-hmm.
okay, the mean time to do this type of thing is this, but here are some external factors that are going to adjust that, so plus or minus
Right.
that. And that's all it's really doing. They're more of a heuristic algorithm than anything else.
Right. So it's looking, like you said, that's interesting. So it's looking at past data and it's just saying, because of this, it's probably going to be, which is pretty much, I mean, that's what we do with any type of prediction. I don't know if you can dial it much because you can't tell into the future, but maybe you can find, maybe AI does help us find more anomalies that we would overlook as far as predictive behaviors that have happened in the past that had an impact that maybe we missed from a human, like, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You can use it to do pattern matching and say, like,
Yeah.
give me edge cases that, I haven't thought of, and it pull up, here's 50 instances of things that aren't accounted for in your algorithm.
Yeah.
You could absolutely do that. And I don't know that we ever incorporated that into that system, but I know that our system was far more accurate than the partners we've worked with on their delivery estimates. We would tell them, actually, it's going to arrive at your other facility at this time. And they started using those partners, which are very large, started using our system to predict their own with just basic heuristics, because it turns out with enough historical data and enough current knowledge, unless something amazingly anomalous happens, it's going to be really correct.
Right.
Right. We couldn't predict that the Suez Canal was going to get blocked by an ocean container ship going sideways. Right. Can't predict that.
Yeah. I love this data conversation. Because I get asked a lot with what I do, like, where is AI applicable in business, and where is it not, and what's futuristic and what's not? Again, I love this because, again, we're talking about the starting point, but often a real applicable business use case of AI. Now with Vala, is this a platform? Is it productized, or is this really custom according to what is needed, or is it a little bit kind of both, like it would be in a lot of cases?
Yeah, it will be a product. We're not fully live with the product yet.
Okay.
So the very much the intent is for there to be I've started calling it chat ops because I can't come up with a better term for it. Or AI ops, I guess, is what some people are starting to call it.
Yeah.
But the premise is this, and so bear with me, this is going to be a little bit long-winded, but if we can get in and we can map out all the heuristics of your systems, we can understand how they're used, what they do to the data within it. So what the workflows, what the data flow, and what the outcomes of all that are, we can first of all help you do your job if you're a human being interacting with these tools, right? Because you can find the missing data, you can do your job. But why do you still need those other systems now? Why do you still need the ERP or the WMS? Right? You don't. So if the interface of principal use, the one that I actually use, is Vala or chat in some form, some type of AI tool that I can interact with, and better yet, like, especially if you're in logistics, you're not sitting at a computer. You're never looking at one of these. You might be looking at one of these on a regular basis, right? You might be using your phone. Why shouldn't it be mobile with me? I'm in the field.
Yeah.
So having the ability for it to be right there and me to interact with it and do my full job takes away I call it the tyranny of the terminal. Like we will have better data because we will have it where the people are and they can interact with it in a way that they're comfortable without mistyping or screwing it up somehow.
Yeah.
We will also be able to help them do their job better because we can tell, like, when I'm looking for something, I can find it. It's going to help me find it, right?
Yeah.
So our ultimate view of what happens is that you do move entirely towards that type of system where I'm interacting with it via voice and text, voice and chat. And that's kind of the end state.
Yeah.
At that point, right?
Yeah. No, this is exciting, and especially I say especially logistics and supply chain and things like this, but across the board, if you think about someone who, and it's not even maybe at the CEO level, but let's at different executive layers where you need information. You've got to send an email to this person to get it. You got to call this person to get this information. You got to call this person. I've spent years in telecom, and what a structural mess that is to find it from accounting to, let's say, day two support statistics to implementation statistics to revenue statistics. This is exciting because now what you're talking about is I can go to one source and get that information real time without having to go to, and then you think, okay, well, that's great internally. Now you take that from a customer experience standpoint, and now you say, you turn it right. You see my mind, like I'm putting the pieces together now. Now you say, yeah, from a customer experience, but both. And I did learn very early on in my career that my internal people, as an IT director in printing technology, I learned very early on that everyone internal was my customer too, right? So, but across the board, yeah, this is fascinating. So, are you also doing customization right now, or is your full focus just is it this right now?
Yeah, no, it's this. That's the craziest part is if you build it right, there's no need for customization.
True.
So if you start with something like let's just interrogate their IT systems, let's look at those and see what's going on, map that out.
Yep.
And you can do almost all of that with access to one tool, Git. Just give us access to your repos.
Yeah.
Because we can we can crawl that. We can map out how it all interconnects. We can see what other systems they interact with, what black box systems they interact with, right? I bought this off the shelf thing for my WMS and I've integrated with SAP over here. And right, I can see all that because it's there in code.
Sure.
Right. So from that, we get a lot. We're still missing what happens in all those black boxes, what's happening inside. So there's two halves to our solution that have to exist.
Yeah.
There's the what do you have, what are you doing? And then what effectively happens from that, what outcomes are derived. And then there's all those other systems. What did I buy? What did I implement? How am I using it? Right? So we have an internal and external model. We have their internal view. Here's your map of your world. And then we have a map of you use SAP for HANA.
Yep.
Here's what its data looks like. Here's how its workflows generally look like. We can see that you did these weird additions to it because that's what everybody does. And
Yep.
those two systems can effectively argue with each other to come up with here's what's actually going on. And then we can answer any question about your business and your technology.
Right. But let's jump back into the data. Where I still see a data problem with this at the beginning is you have these data lakes now with massive amounts of disparate data and data sources. And now you are talking about tapping into all the data sources, but the processing power to be able to quickly read through, I guess there would be some indexing and caching that would be involved with it as well. And then is there an initial clean and integrity process that has to happen before? You see where I'm going with this?
Yeah. So the interesting thing about this is I'm really talking about the transactional systems on the operations teams.
Okay.
Far more than I'm talking about the analytics systems.
Okay.
So, and you know what that means. That means I get to ignore history.
Right.
I only have to respond to events.
Right.
Right. So yeah, you do need that history to be able to inform like predictive systems, but we're not doing predictive yet.
True.
We're staying with what's the state of the world. I need to know where this item is. I need to know where this container is. I need to know if I've got this in stock. That's just current state.
Yep.
Right. So yeah, there's a data problem. There's a huge amount of data, but it's a lot easier to deal with when you're only talking about the transactional right now problem.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's amazing. That's such a great use case for right now. I mean, something that's needed, and I like the approach to it. I also like that you have this really good pathway to this, to how your knowledge of coming into this point of developing Vala and to doing everything that you've done. It's based off of success at one point, which moved into a different system, that success at another point, which moved into this next area, which is again leading to success. So it's not saying it can't fail, but it's it's a pretty solid plan, right?
I can't disagree with that.
Yeah.
I feel like it's a really solid plan. Like I've been a founder before, but it's been a while since I've been in the spot, right? And there are things that you learn when you're doing the job on a regular basis, like any other career, any other role. And there are definitely ways that we can fail that would entirely be my fault. But the plan's good. Technology is a great idea. The market's there. It's a great use case. And I think we're set up for success on that front. Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. So what about other AI technologies out there that you see? I think this is obviously a huge area that needs to be solved. And it seems like you also have an approach of humanity with AI, meaning you want to solve problems in the world. Like you're saying, I'm putting sofas in people's houses earlier. You wanted to do something more. So obviously you have that mindset. What are areas you think in AI, from maybe sustainable living, green energy, to other things that you think are untapped, or that are beginning to be tapped into, that you think there are some huge opportunities?
Well, the medical research field is always going to be one because of the sheer amount of possible permutations and how the data can be interpreted. Uh, Anything in the scientific space where research of a huge number of interconnected variables could occur.
Mm-hmm.
So research, science, all on that front, no question, there's tons of opportunity there. On the like even in just the logistics space, something that we definitely touch on but don't really focus on is route planning for different things.
Mm-hmm.
Do I want to make it the cheapest route? Do I want to make it the most energy efficient route? Do I want to have the least carbon output from it? Like there's a lot of variables that could come into that kind of problem to be solved as well, right? And then when you're talking about, I mean, I don't even have to leave the supply chain and come up with 100 of them, right?
Right, just within that,
Yeah, because one of the ones that I've always found fascinating, but I haven't seen a solution for, and if somebody wants to go do it, I think it'd be an amazing problem to go solve, is demand shaping. So it's the connection between what I procure, where I place it, and what I advertise into who and when.
Okay.
Right? Because in most cases, what you're doing is you're advertising either something I've already got in a warehouse.
Sure.
But that's actually not what happens. What happens is I usually advertise, and then I'm like, hey, do we have it in warehouses anywhere? Like, does it exist in our inventory somewhere? And people are like, yeah, we've never owned that. I don't know why we were advertising it. Like, and so people want to buy the thing and we don't have it. That's a very common thing, right?
Yeah.
Because there's no connection between how we produce advertising and put it into the world and what I can sell you.
Yeah, that's awesome. So now let's jump into, I want to get more of your thoughts. I love this, just picking your brain here. It's amazing. Yeah. We talk, and you hear often about AI replacing jobs, right? And overall, it will replace some, but I hear the marketing terms, of course, reimagine. We have to reimagine people's jobs, which I guess there's some truth. But how do you see humanity and businesses who need to keep the human touch, but also you see these huge efficiencies and maybe cost savings? And how do you see people fitting into this world of AI?
I think that I called it the tyranny of the terminal, right? A lot of us that are information workers, knowledge workers, including things like lawyers and everybody else, we are stuck in front of a computer a lot of the day. Yeah. Because this tool that was supposed to automate and make our world easier to do requires people to interact with it in a very specific way, right?
Right.
It's not the most efficient, not the best tool, not the best way of doing it. We have better ways now. What I think that actually allows is for us to get back to a place that is more human-centric when it comes to work, instead of being so computer-centric. Because it becomes just an assistant. It's just literally an assistant that helps you do your job, helps you get the information you need when you need it, helps you enter it when you need to enter it. And if we do it right, which, there's lots of reasons why some companies will abuse it, but it should get us back into the world interacting.
Sure.
I'm going to tell you a weird story that's related.
Okay.
So when I graduated from university and started the first company, it was 1990, I don't remember. And my grandfather was trying to understand what I did. Yeah. I was like, well, okay, so I sit on a computer and I enter a bunch of stuff to tell the computer what to do. And then it does stuff. And that's how the business works, because all the stuff that I build runs the business. And he's like, I don't get it. What's a computer? Right. Because in his entire career, he'd been an executive and he had never interacted with a computer. That was in a building somewhere else, right? That nobody interacted with. Yeah. And so he didn't get my world at all. But I had the same problem. Wait, Grandpa, what the fuck did you do excuse me, what did you do every day? How did you do your job? How did you get information? How did you communicate with others? It's like, we walked out into the hallway, or we walked over to somebody's desk and we knocked and said, hey, you got time? We got to figure this out. And I brought a stack of papers in my notebook and we did it. Yeah. Or we go to the typing pool and have somebody write up a letter and send it off to somebody. And the reason I tell that story is their world was a lot more human, a lot more. Yeah. It was all human interaction, direct, conversational, in person. And I think that even though I love working from home, I love the remote life, we still crave human interaction. It's one of the reasons I do the podcast. It's like why I love being on other people's podcasts, right? Yeah. It's not necessarily in person, but it is personal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it
The
gives us
human
a chance.
interaction is huge, right? Sorry, go ahead.
I
Finish.
was gonna say, I think it actually gives us the freedom back. It gets us out of the terminal.
Yeah, I agree. And I wonder, and I haven't looked at these studies. I know they have to be out there, but I wonder how many businesses, as technology and automation has been around for a while, right? For decades, if not longer, and have tried to go away from the human element and have had to circle back saying, okay, we swung too far on this, this pendulum and now we got to go back. I just have to think though, that there has to be case studies out there of people who have tried to eliminate the human element and found that they need it. And I think now it's going to be even more sought after. And I guess the best example that I have in my head is writing right now is when I first used AI to write stuff and started writing, I was like, this is amazing. This is the best stuff. This is just great content. And then I started actually writing and started studying language and different things like that. And then I was like, man, this is rough. And now the more I'm getting AI, seeing AI, like I went to a blog article about writing human and human tones and things like that. And it was written by AI. I could tell because of the language in it. And so now I find myself having this desire for a human touch. And that might even be through images. Does that, yeah, that makes sense, right? With text and writing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think, I paint and I'm a visual artist.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I actually, that's one of the things that somebody said to me at one point. Aren't you afraid that now that anybody can use Midjourney or whatever tool they want, they can go create their own imagery, that like nobody will ever buy your artwork again? I said, it was never about that in the first place. First.
Right.
But second, I actually think it'll make it more valuable because it was created by a human. There's a element of human interaction and touch and knowing the story behind it that will become more valuable. And
Right.
I do think that's a lot true here. And I agree with you on the writing one. I will often use it to do a first draft.
Mm-hmm.
Or if I get stuck on something, I'm like, I just can't work my way
Right.
through this, right? And I'll then do it. And I'm like, oh, that, great. I can fix that now. I can make that me. But yeah, I think it'll cause us to actually create more, because when you question the authenticity of it, is this coming from a human anymore? You start looking for the signs that tell you it isn't.
Right.
This is like the uncanny valley problem of androids and robots. That's that whole phenomenon.
Yeah.
If it looks close, but it's not quite right, your eye will see exactly what's not quite right. And we're starting to do that now with every image that gets shown to us. Is that real? I don't think it is, because there's all these tells. When it's the text being generated, same thing. I'm looking for very specific languages or use of the rocket when it's a LinkedIn post. There's certain things that it always does. Yeah.
So another interesting thing that I'm seeing too, and this is just human psychology, is that we are also going to pick up and start speaking a little bit more like AI, because we speak from what we read. And so now I'll even start using the word delve. I'll be like, yeah, we're going to delve into that. And then I'm like, what did I just say? Or I'll hear someone else say that. And I'm like, you're a robot. You're not human, no, but you're human. I'm talking to you. But there is going to be this it's going to be interesting as we go back and forth. The other thing that I see AI, and maybe we talked about this earlier, but it's the AI is almost like a canvas in a way. And I think the people like yourself who understand, you're an artist, you understand art, you get that. And so using AI as the tool or the canvas, I don't know quite the terminology for it, to create, you're going to do some amazing thing. And I think there's going to be some AI writers who, once they figure out how to talk to AI and get the right output from AI, are going to be able to create some very amazing writing content. And it's almost going to be a skill. It will be a skill. Don't you think it'll be a skill set eventually?
Oh yeah. I said that I play with a lot of those tools right now, right? Like, so I've been generating a bunch of songs with the one tool.
Mm-hmm.
And I write some lyrics and generate a song. I'm like, I want it in the style of this, because I know enough about music to be able to do that, but not enough to sit down and really do it myself effectively. Right. I don't have a good singing voice. It's always going to sound like crap. I play the guitar poorly, but I can definitely write out the lyrics and have it say, okay, in this style and this, so I can describe it. I can draw images, but I can also much quicker just describe what I want, because I'm capable of that.
Right.
So I've sat down and built these music videos that I'm putting together of like I don't know. One of them's called Chicken on a Mission, and it's answering the question of why the chicken crossed the road, because I thought that'd be freaking hilarious.
Right.
So, but I'm using all these different tools to tell this little story. And the basic answer of why he crossed the road is because he fucking wants to. Why does he have to have purpose?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it is fun as people do dive into from a creative standpoint. And I think you're hitting something too, is that and you mentioned like writing and brainstorming. And if you want to call it ideation, is I do find that AI, if you're talking about just simple and I know we're getting to more of a simpler conversation from generative AI, can't all be complex, but a simpler conversation. I think when you're using that, and like you said, you get stuck, and you want to, if you want to call it expound on or expand on your idea, I think that definitely has does help a lot. Now, what about the morality standpoint of AI? And I like a couple different directions. I want your take on morality, and then we're going to get into Neuralink of actually implanting an AI chip in your head. Of course, from my cybersecurity brain starts like going crazy with that, but my creative brain starts going nuts with it as well, saying, wow, what if I could do this, this, and this? Like it's amazing. So morality overall in AI, I know it can go a lot of directions. I do want to hear about Neuralink, but any other ideas you have?
Yeah, so the original plan with Vala, or actually our original tagline was, it wasn't morality, it was ethics and AI.
Okay.
And before I came up with the idea of Vala, I was spitballing a bunch of other ones. And one of them was, well, we know where all this training data is coming from. And I was looking specifically at the visual arts and going, wait a second, if I can generate in the style of, if I can say something like, I would like a painting of 3 dogs in the style of Vincent van Gogh, shouldn't I theoretically be able to do the opposite? Shouldn't I be, as Vincent van Gogh, who's long since dead, of course, but like, shouldn't I be able to look at something generated and say, that's 25% my intellectual property in some way? It's my style. And so I came up with how that would work. It's actually not that clever. It's very similar to how Gen AI works, but just taking the inverse. And so I'm very conscious of the intellectual theft that has occurred to create some of these models, and it has definitely been that.
Sure.
I mean, people putting their imagery online and putting their music online and all of that was always a way of sharing. It wasn't meant for somebody else's IP.
Yeah.
Right. So there's going to have to be a reckoning with that at some point.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I take the side of the humans on this one. I think that there has to be. It's not an okay thing for large companies to all of a sudden own something that they didn't create, that was stolen from somebody else, and that has to be rectified.
Sure.
When it comes to, there's a lot of different ways you can go with the ethics conversation too, like on, is it telling the truth?
Yeah.
Right. Now, there are like philosophical debates on truth and like, what is truth?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that when most people say truth, they mean facts.
Yeah.
Yeah. So are these accurate representation of what occurred or what is true?
Right.
We haven't figured out how to incorporate that into the models too. And that definitely needs to be, you need to fact check it. We know that. And so what I've described, and I think where we're at, is the generative AI tools today are very much like a teenage boy. Very, very confident. Actually impressive of a great many things, but I sure don't trust them.
Yeah.
And you got to make sure that they're doing their job. And they're doing a good job of it. So there's a lot of directions we can go on the ethics side of it. We could delve deep.
We could. Well, I would be keen to delve deep into that someday. Yeah, it's interesting. I was doing this. I was looking at AI with statistics and looking at comparing some work models, just hypothetical work models in AI. And I had some spreadsheets that I downloaded and threw it in there, and I said, "Hey, give me an overall synopsis of this." And 2 of the categories it came up with, and I was looking at quantitative and qualitative data between the spreadsheet, and 2 of the categories weren't even in there. And I went back through. I was like, "These aren't anywhere." And so I asked. I was like, "Hey, these aren't even in there." It's like, "Oh, I'm sorry. Like, let me look at it a little closer." It actually said that Yeah, let's look at it closer. You weren't even on point there. And
Yeah.
so you're right. Right now we're still at a point where you need to fact check and double check, especially on some things. I think AI rushes things sometimes where it tries to give you the quickest answer and not the most correct answer. But I'm also seeing some things in medical and asking medical questions of the accuracy of that is amazing in the medical community, like asking better than WebMD. Actually, it's very accurate. So we're kind of seeing a little bit of both, of some accuracy and some not.
Well, and you know the mechanism of that, right? Like where hallucinations are actually coming from, and why you get inaccuracy versus accurate.
No.
Oh, so the
Yeah.
it's always
Good.
junk in, junk out. The better the
Okay.
training
Yeah.
data, the more accurate it is, the better you're going to have. If you're a lot of the common general use case models are a collection of like everything said online ever.
Yeah.
Great. How much of what's online is fact?
Right. Not much.
So you're going to get the average of that coming
Yeah.
out. And actually, hallucinations I tend to think of as kind of similar thing that happens in your brain when you dream,
Hmm.
which is you're kind of at the edges of your thoughts. So sometimes it's the things that are remnant that you're dealing with in the day that you didn't put into the front of your brain. You were
Yeah.
just kind of backbraining it, and your brain's trying to figure it out, and it's just kind of spinning on it.
Hmm.
And with hallucinations, it's kind of the same thing. It's trying to connect things that it doesn't have good connections for,
Yeah.
right? Because it didn't have
But
that.
it feels like it has to give an answer instead of just saying,
Correct.
I can't answer that. It's not programmed to say, I don't know, or else I can't answer that, which would be nice if it did. But it's like, if I don't know, then make something up.
So this is actually one of the things we're trying to solve for too, by the way. We talk a lot about conjecture versus fact.
Yeah.
So we wanted to be able to give you conjecture because sometimes it's going to do its best to guess because it doesn't know, but it needs to tell you it's doing that.
Yeah.
Right. So when it's presenting facts, it should say this item shows up on this database, in this location or whatever you're asking for. It should be able to say that. But if it says, but we think that means it's in the Port of Long Beach, right? It should say that. It should say it should in some way
Right.
inform you that it's an opinion.
Right.
Yeah.
That it would be great if you could solve. I think overall it will. I mean, eventually, I think they'll dial it in enough to where it's going to, of course, be more accurate and be more factual. But yeah, also kind of give you a heads up at where it's uh, taking liberties in its response. So okay, so obviously, okay, we got to wrap up. But your last thoughts of are yours, of course, your podcast, your business, how to get a hold of you, and any last thoughts of things you want to talk about or hear with AI.
Yeah. So the podcast is Techtastic. I always say it's Techtastic. It's an intentionally optimistic view on technology's impact on society.
Yeah.
And you can go to techtastic.tech or anywhere you get your podcast, you can, of course, get it. Christianhammer.io is actually a pretty good place to get a hold of me, as well as see all the articles and news and interactions and podcasts that I've been on.
Nice.
And then vala-ai.com. We have the -ai instead of vala.ai or vala.com,
Okay.
unfortunately, because we're not the only one. But all of those are good places to get a hold of me and to find out more.
Nice. Any last thoughts?
Oh man, there's so much to talk about. So like we're at the very beginning of this technology, really, even though in some form or another, AI, as at least the way I think about it, is decades old. We're still at the very beginning of it really impacting the rest of society and not just being a bunch of researchers working on it.
Yeah.
And that means that when somebody claims to be an expert, you should treat them just like you would a response from the AI itself. Is the right? Sure.
Right.
But verify, because you never know.
Yeah.
And the other part that means is that you have that chance to be an expert too.
Yeah.
So start using the tools and see what they can do for you, but treat them like a teenage boy.
Right. I love it, Christian. This has been amazing. Your insights just they've blown me away, and literally, like, and really, I've really appreciated getting to know you better and just hearing again your thought leadership. It's been amazing. So thanks for jumping on with me.
Oh man, it's been an absolute pleasure. Second time conversation with you. Love both of them immensely. So thanks for having me on.